freshman class, colleagues on the staff. To quote Neil Simon from his play, Brighton Beach Memoirs, it's hot. It's Tarzan hot. But please bear with me while we convocate. Now, some of you are asking the question, what in the world is an academic convocation? What does it mean to convocate? It means to speak with one voice about the mission of an institution. It has a long and distinguished legacy in higher education. And I know it's late, and you've had a long race yesterday, and it's been a wonderful orientation, but lend me your ears for a few minutes, because it's a special privilege for me to deliver this, my first convocation address as the 6th president of the King's College. We are in hallowed halls. In this place, in this very room, men like William Vesey, protege of Increased Matter, heralded the good news of Jesus. The lady of this church that stood on this place included members of both the First and Second Continental Congress. So if you want to get your colonial spirit on, now would be a good time. Preeminently, our setting here tonight is a historical marker that you have now been inaugurated into the company of New Yorkers. The city has welcomed such aliens since its origins. You may feel like one in the city tonight. I am right there with you. I'm new here too. And as an alien, I have felt compelled to say to my faculty colleagues, as I have become their new president, I come in peace. Now, I would say, live long and prosper, but I'm still, thank you. Yeah, but I'm actually very grumpy right now at J.J. Abrams for completely ripping off the script to Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, in Star Trek Into Darkness. Thank you. Some of you got that. Grudges aside, I realize that New York City elicits big emotions from people and prompts a lot of comparisons to ancient cities of the past. The city does that by intention itself. But by far the most often used allusion that I hear is to that of Babylon. Mostly I think that description is apt. The word conjures up a lot of images and thoughts to anyone familiar with the name in both its biblical connotations as well as its employment in the history of art, literature, and culture. It simultaneously conveys oppression, decadence, effulgence, and success. One thinks of Albrecht Dürer's woodcut entitled The Whore of Babylon in his series from St. John's Apocalypse. Benjamin Disraeli once referred to London as the modern Babylon, and Camille Paglia, Dr. Bleetler, says pop culture is modern Babylon. Babylon as a term or a concept conveys the feeling of being displaced, of not feeling at home, losing home. It means being in exile, wondering if you will ever find your way back. I think to get the sentiment of the feeling of Babylon, I'd like to appeal to that most inimitable New Yorker of New Yorkers, F. Scott Fitzgerald. In his short story, Babylon Revisited, we follow the journey of one Charlie Wales, who returns to his Babylon, in this case, Paris, to find his daughter Honoria and bring her home. The father and daughter had been separated after a tragic death of his wife, and also owing to the fact that Charlie had become a serious alcoholic in the aftermath of the 1929 stock market crash. And so the child was left to live with her aunt and uncle in Paris. Paris was Charlie's Babylon, a city that offered him so much but gave him more than he could handle. Once flush with cash, he had the hail fellow well met of the Parisian party elite at his feet. once upon a time. But as he returns to the city, he's now broke. He goes back to his old haunts, all the party scene, to find his old drinking buddies like Duncan Schaefer and Lorraine Quarles. But still, Charlie doesn't want to go back to his hard drinking days. He now understands what a dissipate lifestyle means. It literally means to evaporate into thin air, to lose your identity in the bottle. Still, Charlie seems to have a fatal attraction to his old partying self. He leaves his phone number for his old drinking buddies to look him up, and sure enough, they come to find him. The night before he's supposed to take his daughter home, Charlie's buddies come to find him at his sister-in-law Marion's house, and they are completely sotted. 3 sheets to the wind, if you take my meaning. Drunk. Stoned. And they want Charlie to come out and party. And they're in the midst of their wild revelry. Marion, his sister-in-law, sees that Charlie really hasn't changed, or at least that's what she concludes, and she refuses to release Honoria from her care. And so Charlie returns to what is now his expatriate city, Prague, and he's devastated. He wonders how long Babylon will forever haunt him. Will he ever find home? Will he ever get his daughter back? Fitzgerald, like all the great masters, taps in to that universal human condition and those great questions. How do you stay true to yourself in Babylon? We need to ask ourselves that question tonight, and especially if you're a freshman in this midst, but really all of us. How do we stay true to our mission and vision as a Christian academic community with godly ambitions here in the secular city? And further than that, is it possible to thrive in Babylon? I think that there's a great amount of anxiety and dread about this topic amongst at least some of us. So one of the important things that we can remember in this regard is to know that the people of God have always been there before and done that before we ever arrive on the scene. So we always want to look for those biblical scenarios that inform our modern life, and preeminent amongst them with the theme of Babylon is the 6th century BC. Let's think in solidarity with the Jewish people as a new empire advanced on the holy city of Jerusalem, the Babylonian Empire, the greatest empire that the world had ever known. Now let's go to the data. The then king of Judah, Jehoiakim, thought that it would be wise to join in with an alliance against Egypt because they had had an early victory against King Nebuchadnezzar. But he gambled and lost big time. By 597 BC, the city of Jerusalem had been seized, and Jerusalem fell. Jehoiakim's son, Jehoiakim, took it on the chin, literally, and was captured by Nebuchadnezzar, who deported him along with the members of the royal family. When Jehoiakim's uncle, Zedekiah, became Nebuchadnezzar's vassal ruler over Judea, he thought it wise to double-cross Nebuchadnezzar too, and as Baby Bear from Sesame Street once said, he made a very, very bad mistake. Because Nebuchadnezzar returned to Jerusalem and completely laid waste to the city on January 15th, 587 BC. The city fell, and it fell hard. Reports said that you could see the fires of Achish and Jerusalem from up to 20 miles away. The Babylonian army razed the city, leveled the temple in Jerusalem, took all the precious vessels and precious things from the temple, and either killed or deported all but 1,500 souls in the city. The only survivors who were taken to Babylon were the young people with the best educations, the best skill sets, the artists. Now, Babylon became the greatest city that the world has ever known because it had this penchant for doing this kind of thing. It was the economic an administrative and cultural center of the known world at that time. And Nebuchadnezzar saw himself as the divine protector of a new world order. Now, I want you to imagine the scene of those exiles who have just lost home, pressing into the gates of the Ishtar gates in that great city of Babylon. And impossibly, the Ishtar gate has been uncovered by archaeologists and is beautifully on full display at the Pergamon Museum in Berlin. It's almost completely intact. These gorgeous blue gates. The walls of the city were one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The street was 65 feet wide leading up to the gate, which was emblazoned with 2 magnificent dragon reliefs, some 6 feet wide, one red and one white, symbolizing the creator of the world, Marduk, and the storm god, Adad. And the message was clear for all vassals walking through those gates: these are your gods now. It's time for a change. Entering the city, they would have looked up and seen an awesome reconstruction of the Tower of Babel, rebuilt by Nebuchadnezzar after Sennacherib had previously destroyed it. It was more than 300 feet tall. It dwarfed the temple in Jerusalem by some measure, kind of made it look like Nigel Tufton's Stonehenge written on the napkin in Spinal Tap, for those of you that get that reference. Babylon was extensively rebuilt during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. It spanned over 2,000 square acres, by far the largest city of the ancient world. And Nebuchadnezzar was proud of what he had done. The Hanging Gardens were also one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. In this context, the exiles must have thought, how are we going to keep ourselves together? How are we going to recover this sense of home? How are we going to stay us in this context? The survivors, these exiles, how are they going to make it in this adverse situation and context? What cookies did they have to bring to the party? And what does the Bible say? Well, if you look in the book of Daniel, chapter 1, it actually tells us what is going on. And I won't read an extensive passage of Scripture here, but I do want to read you this. Daniel 1:17 says that there are 4 youths, and God gave them learning and skill in all literature and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in visions and dreams. And at the end of the time, when the king had commanded that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king spoke with them. And among all of them, none were found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore, they stood before the king. And in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters that were in his kingdom. And Daniel was there until the 1st year of the reign of King Cyrus. Now, in the midst of all those magicians and sorcerers, they must have certainly had a Dumbledore who was there to say to them, you have a great choice that now lies before you. Can anybody finish the sentence? You can either do what is easy, or you can do what is right. That's the situation that they found themselves in. So they were prepared. They were knowledgeable. They were skillful. Now, what cookies did they bring to the party? They had learning. They had been schooled in Judea. And what was their curriculum back home? Well, in Israel, by the age of 10, Bet HaSefer, which would be sort of, elementary school for us, each child, boy and girl, had to memorize Torah, word for word. We have a hard time remembering our Twitter handle, okay? These people memorized the entire first 5 books of the Bible, word for word. Deuteronomy 14, go. They had it down pat. For those that progressed beyond that stage, by Bet Midrash, which was sort of secondary school, their curriculum included the scriptures, The whole of the scriptures. They had to memorize the rest, the law, the prophets, and the writings, theology, history, the economics of the time, manners, agriculture, so they knew what to do during the festivals, grammar and language, both written and vernacular, basic arithmetic, writing, and ethics. So the question is, how would Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah match up to the undergrads that they found when they showed up to the University of Babylon? Well, for one thing, they had very different cosmologies about how the universe got here, Dr. Hershey. They had very different notions. The Babylonian Chronicles tells us about some of these things and what kind of education their kids had. Their creation story was about the great patron deity of Babylon, Marduk, who had an epic battle, a la something that you would see at your local Cineplex, in which Marduk went to battle with the great dragon Tiamat. And when he vanquished the great sea dragon, he ripped the guts of the dragon out, spewed them all over the cosmos, and that's how the world got here. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Not really. I mean, it's dragon guts. It's goo. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. No, if I'm a little Jewish kid in that context, I'm frankly thinking, I'll take that version of the creation of the universe where, God created it good and it was not a bloody dragon carcass. Thank you. God created the world good. It's not dragon guts. The pagan religion of Marduk was one of power, not of service. They studied magic and science and divination. And yes, the four used, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their new Babylonian names, did take a course in defense against the dark arts. They would have studied astronomy and astrology, languages, again, economics, trade and commerce, art and music. Now, if you think about it, my dear friends, put those two curricula together, the Jewish one and the Babylonian one, and you pretty much come up with the PP&E core of the King's College in New York City. Hey, yeah, come on. Right. Now, by the way, just to be clear, the King's College itself is not Babylon. I will tell you what it is. It is Rivendell. The King's College is Rivendell. It is the last homely house, the last outpost of civilization before you take your journey into Mordor. That's for all of you Tolkien fans out there. What we are here to do at the King's College is to build upon what's happened in your homes and churches before you came here so that we could prepare you with the best of the best so that when you go out into this city, you are prepared and ready to rock and roll and perform at a very high level. The foundational curriculum for success that you'll be studying here has been stable for pretty much the last couple of millennia. So if it's good enough for Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it's good enough for you. So when it came for Nebuchadnezzar to choose before all who stood before him in his presence as his political servants and as his economic advisors, whom did he choose? It was those Jewish boys. Those are the ones that he wanted. Why? Because they were better. Because they were in a position to compete. Because they were able seamlessly to integrate their faith and their ethics and their morality into the highest levels of academic skill set possible in the culture in which they lived. And second, because there was a spiritual dimension. Daniel was able to divine the dreams of kings and interpret them in the light of God's global purposes. So I have to ask you as incoming students and returning students, are you ready to be the interpreter of dreams for this Babylon, for your Babylon, the Babylon of your time? That's what you will increasingly need to be able to do, because historically, the West has sprung from the animating ideals that come out of the great Judeo-Christian civilization. To quote Roger Scruton, who is in my pantheon of philosophers, by the way, Culture has its root in religion, and from this root the sap of moral knowledge spreads through all branches of speculation and art. The true conservative cause, Scruton says, when it comes to the universities, ought to be restoring judgment to its place in the humanities. People of my generation were taught to believe that there are certain human universals which remain constant from age to age. You will learn those at the King's College. Now let's get serious here. Faculty, I'm talking to you. We know that these students are about to go out into Babylon and compete, the secular world in which they will live. Let's throw our best junk at them. Let's give them the best stuff we've got, the best material. But let's do so with the sweet savor of Christ on our lips, he in whom all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge are stored. The world in which we now live sees us, you and me, us together, as aliens and strangers in the world. So, faculty, my admonition to you is keep Rivendell weird for Jesus. And all God's people said, amen. All right, now here's the good news for you, both as faculty and as incoming students. In ancient Babylon, it was because Daniel, Mishael, Hananiah, and Azariah were spiritually grounded with a real moral compass that not only did they survive, but they thrived in this adverse and hostile environment. So when you get to Jeremiah chapter 29, we think of the exiles as this beleaguered, grumpy, wilting, homesick, not weak-kneed people. It's not true. The Bible doesn't say that. It says that they rocked it out in Babylon. Jeremiah 29 has an admonition from the Lord saying, plant gardens, be entrepreneurs, grow businesses, put down roots, become key contributors to the common weal. They stood in the presence of kings and advised them. They became the artists and leading educators and citizens of this day. And that's the context under which Jeremiah 29:11, that everybody has in their Bible promises book, that I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you. That is in the context of thriving in a secular city. Now, at the risk of sounding like an infomercial, I want to say, but wait, there's more. And the more is this. When you get to Daniel chapter 2, verses 46 and following, it says that after Daniel had interpreted this dream for Nebuchadnezzar, he said, who do you got with you? And Daniel brought all of his friends, and they became the economic advisors and the culture ministers of this great Babylonian empire. They did more than just bring their friends to the party. They ran the table in terms of cultural influence. Now, what I want to impress upon you is this unique opportunity that now lies in front of you. God has brought you to the King's College, a place that is uniquely positioned to help you transition from the Christian context from which you have come to be princes and kings and queens and princesses in Babylon, that you will compete when you graduate. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating thereof, to use the British expression. Our graduates compete at a very high level. Our 6-month placement rate after graduation is insane. The things that people are doing that are recent graduates of the King's College, working for Penguin, working for MTV, Viacom. We think, Christians aren't allowed to compete in that space. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. There are graduates, and they're competing right now. So let's give thanks for that. And you're going to join that company. And all around you, you have this faculty, and not just them, not just the staff. They're awesome. But there is a whole host of people who are friends of this college who are CEOs, who are leaders in the financial industry, who are people in government and politics. They've been visiting me ever since I've been here, just streaming through. People from the media, people from the arts saying, we are behind what is happening at the King's College, and if we have anything to say about it, these people will succeed, and we will see to it that they succeed. So where are you going to serve in your Babylon? That's the question for you tonight. Where are you going to take your place? You need to start praying about that. Now, I want to end tonight by asking you to travel back in time with me. Climb aboard, O thou Whovians, onto a TARDIS of our own making, to the sleepy little seaside town of Belmar, New Jersey. We materialized. Boom. In Belmar. And when we walk out the door, who do we see but a dashing young Italian, Joe LeConte. No, it's not Joe LeConte. Although he is dashing and young. We see a dashing young Italian experimenting next to a huge antenna. He's Guglielmo Marconi, the innovator of the radio. And we say, hello, can we help? And he says, well, I'm just trying to finish up as much as I can with my wireless girdle around the earth, the first radio network that he was building, because I'm being shipped off to serve as a lieutenant in the Italian army in the Great War known as World War I. So we bid him farewell, and we climb back into the TARDIS and dial in the controls, this time for 1942. Let's see what happens at this site in 1942. And when we materialize, we step outside the door and we see a furtive character kind of dashing in the shadows, and we kind of follow him, and pretty soon we find out that he's a Nazi spy. He's interested in this facility, and we find out why. Because this site now that Marconi was at earlier is now operated by the U.S. Army, Camp Evans, and it is the same place where radar is being developed, the very technology that beat Hitler. So let's just pretend, this is, fictionalized at this point. So let's pretend that we collaborate with one of the scientists there, Werner von Braun, who's a real guy, and we get this Nazi spy captured, and he's now in custody, and we get back in our time travel machine, and then we go back to 1937. Let's go back again, 1937. Same spot that we were just at, where the Army was operating Camp Evans and developing radar. What do we find there? Young undergraduates glide across a quad with books under their arms. Professors in turtleneck and tweed talk of lofty things. There's no Marconi here. There's no Army here. We walk into the main building, and we walk down a hallway, and we see a bright red light and a flashing sign that says, "On the air." And as we step into the door, we see a radio studio where we find one Percy Crawford, the radio evangelist who founded the King's College in Belmar, New Jersey, and this is his campus. The same place where Marconi developed the radio, the same place where the Army pioneered radar that beat the Nazis. And he's imploring people to follow Jesus, and that it will be the young generation on the campus of the King's College that will change the world. And so we say amen to that, and we take our leave, and we have one last stop. We go to 1946, again back to Camp Evans, and now early space exploration is in the mind's eye of the engineers there. And we find out that at this very same location where the King's College was at is the same location where the radar was developed to bounce signals back and forth to the moon that allowed us in the 1960s to hear Neil Armstrong say, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Here at the King's College, sometimes we feel as though our talk about the college's core value of promoting free markets, free citizens, and a free church will seem alien to the New Yorkers we meet on a day-to-day basis. It almost seems sci-fi to them. What are you talking about when we start talking about this stuff? But as Louis C.K. said to our spoiled generation, when we get impatient with how long it takes a text message to go through, it's not going through. He's like, give it a second. It's going to space. Can you give it a second to go to space and come back? Thank you. Let's give it a second. We're Kingsian. We can have the long view. We can wait. We've bounced radar beams off the moon and back before at our location. We can do this. Freshmen, give this faculty and me and this staff your 4 best years to help instill in you the animating ideals that once made our civilization great. Help us give a new generation ears to that message. It may seem to us like bouncing signals off the moon. Is it ever going to come back? Some of the ideas in the engineering will be hard, but I promise you it will be worth it, because learning about politics, philosophy, and economics, and business, and finance, and media culture, and the arts will show the world Christ, who translated from heaven to earth to be the helmsman of an eternal, moral, redemptive, and spiritual world that is now available to us all in the King's College. May God bless you in this academic year, and may God bless the King's College. Thank you very much.